Ray. What do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
All right, yo, let's get into it.
Try to take over the world.
Preaching freedom.
Try to take over the world.
And greatest chaplain in the world, Mr.
Try
Lance
to
O'Neill.
take over the world.
All right. We are live and we are rocking and rolling this morning. Can everybody hear me okay? I know it's a little rough. We got a special show today. I know you guys see an extra POG in the house today, so we're going to get it rocking. We're going to forego our formalities and introducing ourselves. Chappie, you know who he is. You know who I am. But today, we got Mr. Evan Jaqua. Say it one more time. I messed it up.
Jaqua.
I practiced it like 17 times during the intro and still messed it up.
Nobody ever gets it right. Nobody gets it right. So.
I know, right? So Mr. Jaqua is here to join us today. He is the founder of the Solutions Party. Let me make sure I get this blurb right. A bold new political movement focused on breaking the cycle of career politicians, ending partisan gridlock, and restoring purpose to American governance. How does that sound? Did I do okay?
That sounds just perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself.
I love it. Chappie, what up, man? Now that we got all the formalities out of the way, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, sorry.
Happy,
sorry. My fault.
Go ahead.
My bad.
All I was going to say was, hey, if there's a party that is ready to actually have solutions and get rid of the gridlock, I'm doing much better.
So, for those of you guys don't know, we got two Cali men in the chat today, and I guess I'm in Cali now, so I'm Cali by trade, at least temporarily. Anyway, so that's what Chappie's got the Dodger Stadium up this week. He had the Brave Stadium up last week, but you know we're not gonna speak on baseball. Baseball is dead this year. We'll pick it up next year in the spring. We're not going to talk about baseball anymore. Let's get into it. So, Evan, how are you, man? Welcome to the show. First and foremost, you got to talk to me. I got 30,000 questions, but I'll let you give your intro and then we'll rock.
Okay, well, sounds great. First of all, I just want to say how honored I am to be here. I've been looking forward to this for months, and I'm finally glad we were able to make it happen. And I'll just start off by saying that I've spent most of my life actually overseas in different countries. I've learned many different languages, including Japanese, Spanish, Chinese. I actually got my degree in Japan in computer science, a branch of computer science that's directly related to AI, which we can talk about AI at some future show if you'd like. But one of the great things that I've been able to experience is just talking with people around the world and hearing the commonality that we all seem to have when it comes to government and politics. A lot of the ideas that you find on solutionsparty.org, I really can't say that I take credit for them. A lot of them have come through discussions with people from around the world from a whole bunch of different perspectives. But what's the biggest commonality? There's some very major common points here that we all seem to share. And it all points to this one basic fact. Despite what you hear our politicians talking about, you know, the problems our country are due to you know, the left wing, the right wing, the undocumented immigrants, the company. When it all comes down to it, our problems really are due to our politicians. Our politicians are the ones in whom we entrust the sacred power of the people. And they are the ones who have the ability to solve our problems and to make, or to at least make our society progress much better than it is now. Now, why is our democracy not functioning better? Well, first and foremost, it's really important to emphasize that the human brain is a wonderful thing, but the human brain has one major weakness, and that is it forms addictions very easily. We, form addictions to alcohol, to tobacco, to drugs, to porn, to social media. But probably the most addictive thing of all, and history I think has shown this, is power. Once people get power, they do not want to give it up. Let's look at Vladimir Putin. Now, if he were painting houses outside of Moscow, he'd probably be a lot nicer guy. If Kim Jong-un were running an Airbnb in Hawaii and surfing every day, the North Korean dictator, he would probably be a lot different guy. Just like Nicolas Maduro. If he were driving a bus in Caracas now, he would probably not be the vicious dictator that he is now. This addiction to power, as the former Speaker of the House, John Boehner said, completely changes people, as you would expect. If you've ever known somebody with an out-of-control addiction, you know it completely changes them because the addiction becomes the priority. And what is our politicians' number one priority? It's staying in office. That is why our Congress is so compliant, both in Democratic and Republican administrations, because they all fear getting primaried. And so their first priority is staying in office. Now, I happen to think when we elect somebody to represent us, we want them to advance ideas that help us all. We're not putting them in there so that their first job is getting reelected and they spend half their time on the job, raising funds or participating in partisan events to, advance their career. We want them concentrating 100% on their job. Just like, Kenneth, if you hired me as a contractor for 4 years and you found I was spending half of each day just lobbying upper management to get an extension on my contract, you probably wouldn't be too happy. So why are we content to allow our politicians to put their priority into getting reelected? And so that's the first thing we need to address. But there are other aspects, other weaknesses in our democracy that require a multifaceted and what I call mutually reinforcing set of solutions, which is what I've tried to propose on solutionsparty.org. Now, I know that's a long intro, but unfortunately, it's not easy to say all of this stuff in a 15-second elevator speech.
Listen, that is music to my ears. I am on the, I call it the Fire 535 movement. I've been fed up with Congress for a very long time, and I think we need some fundamental changes. Matter of fact, I think the last couple of episodes, Chappie and I have been discussing ways to, what are more effective ways to kind of go into it. So before I pass it over to Chaplain, I got to ask the first question. I got to get this one out. So on your site and your platform, you proposed that political parties should expire after about 12 years. If
Yes.
that always been the case in U.S. history, which political era movement do you think had the hardest time letting go?
Well, let me explain why I propose putting a lifetime limit on political parties. Because as the famous historian Carroll Quigley pointed out in his classic book, The Evolution of Civilizations, organizations become institutionalized. Whether we're talking about, let's talk about churches, they're set up to organize religion. They're set up to, originally as a way for people to understand better spirituality, but they're sort of their own organizations where the priority of the organization is more important than the original purpose. And this happens in politics too. And this is why our political parties become tribalized, they become institutionalized, and the priorities of the party supersede even the priorities of the country. Now, political parties, and George Washington warned against political parties exactly for the reasons that we're seeing now. Now, political parties are not completely useless, though. I mean, they are a way for people with like ideas to organize and present candidates accordingly. But what we want to try to do is get the best of both worlds, where we have these organizations that exist that allow people to organize and present candidates accordingly, but we don't want them to exist so long that they become what we have now, two mindless tribes. And so I propose that, let's put a lifetime limit on political parties. They have to be disbanded after, I just say 12 years. It could be different. We can make it 16 if you want. But the point is you disband them and you prohibit the leaders of the previous party from becoming the same leaders of the new party. Now, some people might say, well, won't the new parties just be carbon copies of the old parties? And my theory is that no, because nobody's going to say, we're starting a new political party. It's going to be exactly like the old guys. They're going to want to present new ideas. They're going to want to present people reasons to get excited about the new political party. They're going to form new coalitions that nobody would have thought of previously. So I think that part of the thing we need to do is disband our major political parties and start new with new political parties, and have those new political parties only exist for 12 years. Now, when I talk about the Solutions Party, by the way, we walk the walk, talk the talk. The idea is, when we're trying to get this to be an official political party, but we also would have just a limit of 12 years, because I don't want this to ever become tribalized or institutionalized, where the priorities of the party become the priority, if I'm making sense.
No, making total sense. I agree. Chappie, you want to chime in?
So I think I'm doing what a lot of people would be doing right now, and jumping on the website, solutionsparty.org.
Okay.
And so, just a quick scan through. There's definitely some. The whole thing with limiting the political. I mean, that would be something I would get behind. We've talked quite a bit about limiting having those term limits and limiting. But I will say there's a couple things that I definitely question.
Okay.
And they're probably not big things, but a transcontinental bikeway, that jumped out at me. I thought, that's kind of silly, but I get it. I used to do some cycling, not that long. I mean, a 30-miler was a long way for me. So
Right.
Putting the money into a transcontinental. Now, if you'd said a transcontinental Autobahn, I would have been right there with you. Let's get an Autobahn going. But let me ask you this, because, and I'm not going to poison the well with what my opinion is, but I didn't see anything on the website regarding one of the buzz issues, which would be man-made global climate change. What would be the position of the Solutions Party regarding climate change?
Well, actually, I do have a section on that called energy. What is it called? Creativity plus energy equals prosperity. I think that's what it's called. And so I talk about this. Now, what I think is really important when it comes to energy is that we have unlimited energy. Energy is everywhere. We have energy from the sun. We have energy from the wind, tidal energy, geothermal energy. We have nuclear energy. We have literally unlimited energy. And why are we basing our economy on a globally traded, non-renewable resource that is rife with geopolitical issues? Well, one of the big reasons is because the fossil fuel business model is an extremely appealing business model for the fossil fuel industry. If you don't believe it, how many thousands of dollars do you send every year when you buy gas to the fossil fuel companies? How many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars do each one of us send to the fossil fuel companies during the course of our lifetime? It's a repeat business. I mean, the best business to be in is one where your customers have to come back and buy your product. And so the fossil fuel companies have incredible power, incredibly powerful business model. And because they are the foundation of our economy, because energy is the foundation of our economy right now, they have incredible political power, and they have a lot of politicians, very powerful politicians in their pocket. Very powerful forces throughout the world, the royal families and the despots. So we need, I believe, to move beyond fossil fuels as quickly as possible, even though there's some applications like aircraft that do require the dense energy that fossil fuels have. But as for the rest, why are we even, allowing our energy to be in a sort of supply and demand kind of business model? Because we have infinite, unlimited energy. It's like we're importing water from Saudi Arabia when we have all the water we need here. And so I tried to address that in that particular article. And I also think that there are lots of opportunities to involving carbon capture, for example. Once you have unlimited energy, the physics definition of energy is the ability to do work. Once you unleash unlimited energy, you have the ability to do unlimited work. And what are some of the things we could do? Desalinate ocean water. That means we can make droughts a thing of the past. We don't have to tap into the aquifers in Central California. We could do carbon capture much more We would have unlimited energy to address that. We would have ability to make recycling actually work for a change. And I actually propose ideas to make recycling work, because once you have unlimited energy, you have the ability to unlimited work. And then you combine that, pardon me, I'm just going to say this very briefly, with an investment in our people. We need a creative, adaptable workforce, because we want to have a market-based economy, but a market-based economy requires cheap energy, or ideally unlimited energy, and it needs an adaptive and creative workforce.
Well, I'll push back on a couple things. One is that fossil fuels are instrumental in producing almost everything we use, everything plastics,
totally
asphalt, etc. But I am a big nuclear guy. When people talk about energy and they say, and I've noticed you're big on nuclear, and if we can crack the fission nut, yeah, I think that's the
You mean fusion?
golden.
You mean fusion nut?
I thought fusion is what we have now. Is
No,
fusion? Am I backwards?
Fission is what we have now. The golden grail of energy, of renewable, unlimited energy, is fusion.
And cold fusion, right?
Well, cold fusion, I've never believed in cold fusion. I've never believed that actually would work, just because of my background in physics, and I've just never believed in cold fusion. But I have believed in the fusion that they're working on now, and that eventually we'll solve that. And the fission, by the way, we can make fission work, which is a conventional technology now, much better than it's where we can make it far safer. We can make it much more modular. And so I am all in favor of fission, of nuclear fission for energy generation, but we need an all of the above approach. Now, when it comes to fossil fuels, as I said, we're not going to eliminate them completely, but one of the other articles is that we can make infinitely recyclable plastic. And that's what I think we want, because we don't want to keep this, what we have now, where you get plastic and you just dump it. You get a plastic bag, you dump it. We're dumping ever more plastic into the environment. Our bodies are absorbing what latest estimate is a credit card's worth of plastic, microplastic. We want to get that crap out of the environment, and we could do that through infinitely recyclable plastic. Now, the plastic industry is not going to like that, but frankly, what's the priority? Protecting our environment from getting all this plastic crap into our bodies, into fetuses, into our food supply, or is it to keep that stuff out and implement, something that could get this craziness we have now, where we're dumping more and more plastic every day into the environment, and that just ends up inside of us and ever more in our environment.
Yeah, I think that. Oh yeah, go ahead, KJ.
Yeah. So how do you balance like energy independence with the global environmental responsibility in that scenario?
Well, let's talk about energy independence. Okay, if we have, you could actually power the entire United States with 100-mile by 100-mile set of solar panels somewhere hidden in the Nevada desert. Okay, if we had a combination of wind, solar, nuclear, geothermal, tidal energy, we could be completely energy independent. You know what? When we talk about fossil fuels, nobody ever talks about the fact that we spend $80 billion a year just defending the Strait of Hormuz in the Middle East. That's money that comes out of our pocket. Okay, now I think, frankly, if we have all of these sustainable technologies here, we're not going to need the U.S. Fifth Fleet to defend it. And so, in fact, when we spend that $80 billion, we're also defending energy for the entire world. So our tax dollars are actually, we're paying to keep the world's energy supply stable. Now, I frankly would rather have that $80 billion invested into making it easier for kids to go to college and get a good education, or go to trade school, for example. Let's make educational opportunities, affordable and very flexible, depending on what your interests are.
So, Jaqua, let me ask you that then. How do we go about having the infrastructure built so that we're, instead of relying on Middle Eastern oil and such, because we actually produce more oil in the U.S. than we import from Saudi Arabia, and our number one and number two import are actually Canada and Mexico. But my question would be then, if we're going to go to solar, and first of all, nuclear is, to me, nuclear is the answer. And the real answer is, because it has some nuclear waste, you basically turn it into a competition and you say, all right, whoever can come up with the way to dispose of nuclear waste in a recyclable or effective way, hey, it's a $50 billion prize, including, let's say, okay, I think we lost KJ for a minute, including, let's say, 5 licenses that are saleable to energy companies. Because I think once the and because BP and all those companies are then going to dump a ton of money into R&D because they want that money. But how do we go from defending the Straits of Hormuz, if we do that, to that 100 by 100 mile? First of all, that's a huge amount of space. I mean, that's the size of Rhode Island. However, the technology, how do we do that where we're not now reliant on getting those solar panels from China, and instead we rely on building here? I think one of the greatest developments we've had in this year is that I'm trying to remember who it was, but one of the companies is investing something like $10 billion to build a microchip factory here. So how do we get those technologies here where we're not relying on China and other countries? So we're not just, taking from Peter to pay Paul, but we're actually saying, hey, this is our country, and we build up so that not only are we energy independent, we are literally independent.
Yeah, I totally agree. That comes down to having, first-rate research and development, and that means investing into our first-rate universities, our first-rate researchers, and then investing in the technology to manufacture those materials, those solar panels, in the most efficient way possible. And so I think that's I don't see that as for being a problem. I think what a bigger problem is just the fact that we need to redo our grid. Our energy grid is extremely outdated, and it's not in any way set up to handle the skyrocketing energy demands that are coming, especially because of not only just regular population growth, but AI. These data centers are extremely power hungry, and we need to be ramping up not only our ability to produce energy, but just as importantly, our ability to deliver energy.
I actually think that's pretty dope. It's difficult though. So would you advocate, or would you be in favor for like a natural carbon audit system or something like that to manage the input and output?
Well, I think though that if we start transitioning, I have a what I like to call it the super alien question, and the super alien question is if a race of super aliens came here tomorrow and said, humans, you've got 10 years to get off of fossil fuels, or we're going to kill all human life, we would have 3 possible answers. We would have answer number 1 is, well, we ain't going to be able to do it. Just get it over with. Answer number 2 is, well, the good news is we have 10 years to party. Answer number 3 is we would roll up our sleeves and get it done. I'm not saying that we could completely get off of fossil fuels in 10 years, but if we were determined, if we saw the benefits of getting off of carbon-based energy generation, and we started transitioning, I think that number 1, we could get our carbon output to be far lower. Number 2, as I was saying earlier, with all of this unlimited energy, things that require a lot of energy, like carbon capture, can become much more practical. And by the way, if we do this, we can actually I think we can make a lot of money helping the rest of the world do the same thing. There's the old Chinese saying that, a crisis is an opportunity. It depends on, if you look at any crisis or any problem, these are all opportunities for work, opportunities for prosperity. And I'd like to talk to you a little later, chap, about the transcontinental bikeway. We could do that offline, but that's just sort of a fun idea. Well, why not? Yeah. It's like I call that the why not column, not to be taken too seriously, but, just, hey, let's think out of the box and think of some ways to bring prosperity to some of the smaller communities that were bypassed when they built the interstate highway system.
Yeah, and I get that. I'm not sure it's let alone feasible. I don't think a lot of people down in Jasper, Alabama are all that intent on jumping on their bicycles and riding up to New York.
No, but I can tell you this, it would bring bicyclists from around the world. You would bring cyclists from around the world. It'd be a huge source of, believe me, there are cyclists around the world who would love to do that. And the thing, the way it's set up is that you don't have to do the entire thing. You could do different segments. And so and each segment would have its own, unique beauty, its own unique allure to it. And so it's not meant to be everybody goes from one side of the country to the other. You could do it in smaller segments.
Well, I think you'd have quite the argument with the environmentalists. Now, personally, I couldn't give a crap about about the environmentalists the way it is now. But I have a different question for you. I'm going to jump to a different subject. So one of the things on there, and I agree with one part, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with the second part. There's obviously a problem with journalism and journalistic integrity. And your solution seemed to be certifying journalists. Now, I grew up as I was going to be a journalism major. I started down that path, and then I realized there's basically no money, and you can barely squeak out a life in journalism. Right. But with that, I think that there's maybe a threat of, if you start certifying journalists, then the problem becomes A, it's unconstitutional because freedom of the press, and B, you could theoretically have a problem with, I understand if some of it gets solved with the parties coming in, but what we have right now is we have a journalism machine that is is center left to far left, which makes, when people say, yeah, but the right has Fox News. Well, yeah, Fox News is one organization that looks crazy far right because everybody else is far left. So with journalism, I like the idea of holding journalists accountable, but how do you go? I'm not sure with the First Amendment how that holds up. Okay. First of all, let me just say, let me make a couple of points here.
Sure. Okay. Journalism is to our politics what policing is to social order. If you have unreliable, weak policing, criminals will take advantage to behave with reckless abandon and impunity. Likewise, if you have unreliable, not widely trusted journalism, politicians will take advantage to lie with reckless abandon and impunity. They like the fact we have a journalism, and our news organizations are not widely trusted because it allows them to control the narrative. If you believe that the pen is mightier than the sword, then our journalism should morally be the equivalent of our national defense, because our journalism protects us from enemies both within and without, whereas our national defense is meant to defend us against enemies from without. Now, talking about the journalism, the thing is that we certify doctors, we certify lawyers, we certify database engineers, we certify truck drivers. I propose that we certify journalists, and then besides the certification, you also grade them. You grade them based on certain factors like the neutrality of their article, the pertinence of their article, how well written is the article, a whole bunch of parameters that you could use every time they write an article. Now, how would you evaluate them? You could evaluate them with AI. You could evaluate them. You could even have professional evaluators. What you would want is a Rotten Tomatoes-like model where you have a whole series of evaluators and they get an average grade. The journalist will get an average grade. Now, if that average grade falls below a certain level, they are threatened, that they will be threatened with being decertified. Now, what's an advantage if you're a certified journalist or if you're a certified news organization is that I propose we make a national press fund into which the government contribute, corporations can contribute, individuals can contribute. And from that fund, if you graduate with a journalism degree, you will automatically qualify to get a monthly stipend. And that monthly stipend will go up if your articles are highly graded. And if your grade goes down based on an average grade of multiple evaluations goes down, you might be, or you will be, decertified. Now, that doesn't mean, though, okay, so let me say, then you have certified news organizations. And why is that important? Well, it's important because suppose somebody makes a deep fake video of Ken doing something really awful. How are we going to know if that's real or not? Well, the first question will be, was that video on a certified news site, or was it on Joe Sixpack's worldwide news site? Now, just because you're not certified does not impede your freedom of speech. It just means you're not certified. You can still start your own quote unquote news site. It just won't be certified. And that does not in any way impede freedom of speech. Just like if you go get a job interview, you have every right to lie during the job interview. But if they catch you lying, they have every right to kick you out of the interview. They're not impeding your free speech. And by the same token, nobody is being impeded from free speech by being certified.
I guess my libertarian side. Mm-hmm. I don't like the idea of certifying pretty much anything. Like, I don't think doctors and lawyers should be certified, let alone hairdressers, because the licensing in this country is absolutely ridiculous. If somebody wants to pay me, well, or my hairstylist, if I'm willing to pay my hairstylist to do my hair, I'm going to know real quick if they're good or not. If I'm willing to go out and trust a lawyer, I'm going to find out pretty quickly if they're good or not. And that goes along kind of with your rating system, is I could rate my lawyers and all that. But I'm not a huge fan of adding government certification to anything. I think realistically, if you want to pay money to somebody to do anything, you should have the right to do it, and the government should not be involved in that pretty much at all.
Yeah, well, I agree that we don't want the government certifying the journalists. I propose that you have an organization like the Society of Professional Journalists, or we could come up with a new organization that's independent of the government. We don't want the government certifying. And we could have even multiple certifications, just like we accredit schools. And I agree that, I see your point of view about, certifying lawyers and certifying doctors. But I think when it comes to journalism, given the fact that journalism is so reliable journalism is so fundamental for our democracy to function, because without a common set of facts, our democracy cannot function. And when we have people adrift in this misinformation chaos that we have now, nobody knows what the truth is. And that is terrible for our democracy, because as I said earlier, that allows the politicians to control the narrative. And every politician wants to control the narrative, just like in Russia. Putin wants to control the narrative, so he gets rid of any news organization that doesn't toe the line. And so I think that in this case, we need to have, for our democracy, we need to have a way of qualifying news organizations and evaluating news organizations, so that people some people are going to say, they're going to disbelieve everything. And I say, well, if you're going to disbelieve everything, you're liable to believe anything. It's when and there are going to be some quote unquote news organizations that are going to say proudly not certified. And that's great. That's fine. But I think that the majority of the people would find it very helpful to know that, say Fox News is certified. And Fox News, by the way, and I'm not just picking on Fox News here, I'm just using it as an example. If they're going to have opinion columnists who are not really opinion columnists, they're more entertainers who are in the business of stoking people's emotions, then that opinion commentator will be decertified, threatening the certification of the entire organization. So that will force a more balanced approach to providing a news commentary as well as news stories.
So I think KJ's smiling because he knows where I'm gonna go.
Okay.
So my question, because I always have a problem with this when people say truth, because I have my truth and you have your truth, and a big problem is I had a commander tell me this, and it's a lesson I've learned for a long time. All three of us can be sitting down in chairs, and between us there's a table with a mirror on it, and I might ask you, all right, Mr. Jaqua, what do you see? And you're like, well, I see the painting up there of the horses, and I see the wall, and I see the bookshelf. And I ask KJ, what do you see? And he says, well, I see the door going outside. And that's so funny. I see a different picture of a lady. And well, that's weird because I see a picture, I see the window going outside, and there's nothing on my side but the window and curtains. And we're all looking, and we all have our perception, and none of us are wrong. So what is the truth? Because perception shapes so much. And so it becomes very difficult. Now, that's not to say, we had a guest on last month that talked about neutrality. I love the idea of neutrality. If every news article was what it originally was supposed to be, who, what, where, when, why, and how, and we we limited the why. Let us come up with our own whys. To me, that would be a huge thing. But okay, I'm going to do one more jump, and then I'm going to let KJ take the next one, because I didn't see it, and maybe you had it on there. What are your thoughts about government supplements to large corporations or fields? Because something like, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars subsidizing things like the corn industry for ethanol. And to me, it's like, if you have a business model that works, you shouldn't be receiving any government subsidies. So why are we doing that? So what do you think about those government subsidies? Should they exist? Who should they go to? Or is that something we...
No, I tend to believe... Yeah, I tend to believe we want to keep government out of we want a market-based economy, and we want to keep government out of it as much as possible. And that includes subsidies. And I think that, once you kind of make it much harder for special interests and politicians to, form these perverse symbiotic relationships, I think a lot of that will go away. Now, there might be some cases where we're trying to develop a new industry. Maybe China's way ahead of us, and we need to kind of help them accelerate their effort. And we might make a strategic decision to temporarily help them get up to speed because they just don't have the ability to bootstrap themselves up. I'm generally against that, but I'm also acknowledging that there are some cases where that might work. But in general, I believe that government should be interference in the economy, and tariffs, by the way, are a huge interference in the economy. I think that that in a way is subsidizing our local industries, and I'm very much against that. So I think that as a general rule, we don't want government subsidizing private industry. We want private industry to succeed on how private industry should, which is competing in the marketplace, innovating, constantly getting better, offering more for the better, more for less. That's how competition should work. And, we want to avoid as much as possible, as somebody who lived in China and seen, communism, socialism, we don't want our government picking winners and losers in general. But again, you never say never. There could be some cases where it makes sense to subsidize an industry temporarily, but never over the long term.
Okay. By the way, I lived in Taiwan for 2 years, so I've seen some of the Chinese. Mine was more the democratic side of it, but KJ, you're up next.
Yeah, no, man, I am absolutely loving it. I think the idea of certifying journalists would be transformational. The only friction point I see you running into is the elephant called capitalism, right? When you start to decertify and validate, like not just Fox News, because they have their own pundits, but CNN as well, who are entertainers who masquerade as journalists, right?
Exactly. That's what it is. Yes, exactly. Somebody who speaks English
No, I think that's transformational, but I cannot see the corporations giving up their profit margins for the sake.
Let me just say this. Okay, let me just say this. In the old days, setting up, say, a newspaper was a major investment. You had to invest in printing presses. You had to have reporters. You had a way to distribute the newspapers. You had to have an advertising department. Setting up a television network or radio network was a major investment. Now, any Joe with a laptop and a web page can start a quote unquote news site. So the conventional model of news has broken down. And what's been replaced? It's been replaced by this infotainment crap that we have now. Fox News, MSNBC, all of these are more in the emotion manipulating business than they are in the, providing the news business. And that's just the way it's become, because that's the only way they can make money, because they can't make money according to the conventional news model, because the conventional news model has completely broken down. Now, I happen to believe that we have to just recognize that, and that there are some organizations like the New York Times that are self-sustaining. They actually have the resources to make it on their own. But we need to have, I think, this National Press Fund going to revitalizing journalism in places where it can't be sustained through economics, like small towns. Our small town journalism has been devastated, and that's terrible for the smaller rural communities, because those small town journalists were fundamentally important to catching local corruption, for example, and to helping to keep the community together. And so if you study journalism at a college and you go back to your hometown, Vernal, Utah, or Dixonville, Wyoming, or whatever, and you start reporting locally, you'll get a stipend. It won't depend. You don't depend on selling a lot of newspapers to make a business. But if you write pertinent articles, well-written articles that are clearly, within reason, neutral, they're not just propaganda for one party or the other, then you will get a higher grade, and that means you get more money from National Press Fund. And so I think, to answer your question, some organizations, if they're going to be political infotainment and not certified, okay, they make their money that way. If they're going to be serious news organizations, let's say call the New York Times a serious news organization. We could argue about that, but one that just for an example, that can make it on its own through the economics of its subscription and advertising, that's great. But for smaller communities where they just don't have the economics to support conventional journalism, it would be supported with this National Press Fund, which, by the way, as I said earlier, is not dependent on one sole source. It's not dependent on the government. It's not dependent on a billionaire. It's not dependent on one particular company. And so that money, you don't have to worry about losing that money if you write an article that's critical of the government, for example.
Yeah, I like the idea. So how do you keep it from being biased or skewed one way or the other? Is kind of my question, right?
Yeah, that's why you have to have multiple, like you have Rotten Tomatoes. If you go to Rotten Tomatoes and you see the movie evaluation, they have like 80 different movie critics and they take an average. Okay, that's something which you would like to have to evaluate journalism. So you have a certification and you have a grade. And how's the grade assigned? It's assigned through a Rotten Tomatoes like model where you have AI programs. Now, I actually worked in the field of AI when it was getting going. And so one of the things AI can do is help evaluate articles based on, how well written they are, how pertinent they are. And you won't want just one AI program, independently developed AI programs. Then you also, besides certified journalists, you want to have certified evaluators so that, you might not have enough evaluators to read every article, but you randomly pick ones and evaluate the journalists that way. And also, if a journalist feels that the AI programs have not been fair, they can submit a claim and have a team of human evaluators review how the AI programs work. Because if the AI programs turn to be skewed, well, that's important information so we can correct the AI models.
Um,
I actually like that.
well,
Go ahead.
I have a problem with AI simply because garbage in, garbage out. So if you can have quality control for the AI, yeah.
Yes, I totally agree. And I just want to, I don't want to interrupt, but I actually worked in the field of AI in a company that was going to be the NVIDIA of its time. And so I really am familiar with garbage in, garbage out. Believe me, I really am. But I do believe, though, that you can take measures with quality control, as you say.
Okay. And speaking of garbage in, garbage out, for some people, I know that it depends on the decision that's made. I didn't see anything, and maybe you had it on there. There's a lot of stuff on, again, solutionparty.org. But because you have the limitations for government for 5 years, you can't run for certain offices after they've run for one, you can't run again. And I love some of those ideas. I really do. But what would your stance if, okay, you're president, how do you deal or how do you work with SCOTUS? Would there be term limits put into place there? Or how would SCOTUS work in that point?
Okay. Yes. If you noticed, I have an article about reforming the judiciary, and that's basically the idea is yes. Number one, we've got to take partisanship out of the nomination process, because right now our judiciary is seen as just being an extension of the political parties. And that's terrible for our democracy. It's terrible when people see the Supreme Court and they just say, well, these 6 justices are going to support the Republicans, these 3 are going to support the Democrats, and it shouldn't be that way. We should have a situation where there's no statistical correlation between the party that nominated them and the decisions being made. But that's not what we have now. So we want to, first of all, revise or reform the way judges are nominated. Number 2, yes, we want to put limits on how long they can serve. Number 3, we want to rotate them around. Why is it we have, so we have a judge in the Ninth Circuit and a judge in the Fifth Circuit and in other circuits. Every 4 years, you rotate them around so that you don't associate one circuit appeals with one party, and you don't do this. You can't do this judge shopping like what we have now. So yes, 3 ideas is number 1. Let's reform let's get the partisanship out of the nomination process. Number 2, let's put term limits. And number 3, let's rotate the judges around. That includes SCOTUS.
So that would eliminate, so I assume it would mean you eliminate the federal, the federal lifetime calling for federal judges. So with all this stuff, KJ and I have talked about this, and a lot of these things that you're talking about are good ideas, but you'd have to have a constitutional convention to get some of these done.
Right.
So how do you go about I'm not even going to say how do you go about. Let me ask you this, because KJ and I have talked about this, and we're in the future going to do this. You have the opportunity to put forth a constitutional amendment proposal. What would if you said, here's the one thing I want the Constitution to, the 29th article. This is what I'm going to go with. The amendment, 29th Amendment. What is it for the Solutions Party?
If I had to make it one choice, I would put a 1-term limit on any political office, and I would make it prohibited to run for another political office for at least 2 years after the previous one ended, because you don't want to have a politician running for office while they're currently serving. We don't want to have something like we had with Ron DeSantis, where he's running for president while he's being governor, because that's going to skew his decisions as governor to try to prime the pump for his presidential run. So you want them focusing 100% on their current job. And the message is basically this: you get one chance to make your mark in history. You get one chance to make a difference. What are you going to do with that one chance? You're not going to get reelected. There is no campaign. You're not in campaign modes. So go in there and do your best job. And yes, you might have to compromise. You might have to make decisions that are tough, that contradict what you had promised during the campaign. But that's why we have representatives. We're not electing representatives to be robots that just do what the fickle public wants. We're entrusting their wisdom to do the right thing, to move things forward. And so if you only have 1 term, I mean, how often have you heard, oh, such and such politician is not up for re-election, so he can vote his conscience? Doesn't that sound kind of ridiculous to you? Why aren't they always voting their conscience? Why aren't they always doing that? And so if they don't have re-election looming over them, if they don't have the partisan pressure, no, we don't want to lose this office because we'll lose the majority. You don't have those ridiculous pressures on them, then they can actually roll up their sleeves and work with their colleagues to move things forward. Let's remember, democracy, people have always disagreed. They will always disagree. What's the key point is how you handle those disagreements. In the old days, they handled disagreements by sharpening the swords, sharpening the spears, and going at it. It was a best band of brawlers that won. But we finally figured out that wasn't the way to solve things. You solve things through dialogue and exchange of ideas, and you vote on them. It's that simple.
So KJ, when he said you have one shot to make history, did you immediately have Eminem, Mom Spaghetti start going through your? Because mine, I did for sure. So KJ,
no,
you're up. Your turn.
No, I had Alexander Hamilton running, man. Listen, that excites me to no end. I am all on board. The only question I have is a lot of these policies to implement, like the desalinization of the oceans, the implementing the solar grids, that would take at least a decade to implement, right? With your platform being a political party being terminated after 12 years, how do you circumvent the fact that a political party would essentially be established just for transformation? There'll be a transitional party just to get things started.
Yeah, the thing is politics should never be about a person, nor should it be about a party. It should be about ideas. And if you like the ideas of the previous party that has been disbanded, or you like the ideas of the politician who only had one term but now can't run again, then you vote for somebody who promises to carry on those ideas. You form a party that promises to carry on this. But ideally, somebody will form a party who will come up with even better ideas. Let's work on this. We've tried these ideas. We made some mistakes. These are our new ideas. Again, I'm going to repeat myself and say politics should never be about a person, a personality, or a party. It should be about ideas, ideals, and vision. So I am not worried about, well, the solution party disappears, and that means all of this progress is going to come to an end. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. And any politician, by the way, who says only I can solve it is lying to you. It's ridiculous. It's not about a person. And the minute we start making it about people, then we start going down the path of what the Russia did with or what the China did with Mao, or what North Korea did. We don't want our politics to be dependent on a particular person ever.
Absolutely love it. So within the framework of the Constitution, would you take for better or worse, would you take a constitutional convention every 12 years with the sunset of the political party and say, okay, hey, these are the amendments we're going to propose, or we'd like to, refresh some ideas for the Constitution on every 12 years? How would you work that?
Hold on, KJ. I thought our proposal was to do a constitutional convention every 25 years. That way is generational. Okay.
Yeah, but that was ours. But I'm talking about with the solution platform sunsetting every 12 years, would that give you an opportunity to kind of reset the system every 12 years, or how would you break that down, or how would you establish a framework?
I think that, suppose we had political parties with a 12-year, I just pulled 12 years out. It doesn't have to be exactly 12 years, but what would happen is that after 8 years, you would start what we would call a phase where you start trying to form, people propose new political parties, and you want to have it so that when all the dust settles, you only have 2 or 3, let's say, government recognized political parties, because you don't want to have a situation like what they have in Japan, where you have one big party, at least they used to, and then 25 tiny parties, because these 25 cannot really organize and compete against the one big party. You want to have 2 or 3 major parties that are competing, and that forces people to compromise, to come together and form coalitions, and which is what you want. You don't want to have 500 different political parties, each with a slightly different ideas. And so after by the time that the 12-year period comes to an end, these 3 recognized political parties will be ready to go. Now, when it comes to modifying the Constitution, they say, well, it's almost impossible. But I happen to believe that once you get all of this partisan, tribal crap out of the way, that you can actually make the changes to the Constitution once you give people the ideas that are being proposed in a clear and honest way, and you hold the people who are proposing these ideas accountable. If they lie, then there should be consequences for lying, just like if you lie on an interview, there should be consequences on a job interview. And so I don't think that actually modifying the Constitution is as difficult as it has been once you get the stupid partisanship and all the vested interest that our politicians have in maintaining their careers, and all the misinformation out of the picture. Now, the other thing I will say is that for these term limits, actually, we don't even have to have a constitutional amendment. If people just agree to vote for politicians who promise to not seek reelection, nor will they try to run for another office while they're currently serving, that's how you could jumpstart this. We don't have to have a constitutional amendment. Vote for people. And by the way, the ideas on the Solutions Party, it's that we welcome new ideas. We welcome disagreement, civil disagreement. If you don't have to agree with all of the ideas on solutionparties.org to join this movement, but the only fundamental ideas that I think are non-negotiable is the 1 term limit thing. I think that that above everything else, I think that's the one thing that we need to work on, is getting this whole notion of career politician out of the picture once and for all. Government, if you get elected, you get one chance to make your difference, make the most of it, and then move on. Simple as that.
So we're almost at an hour. I will say my final thought is just, I couldn't agree more that the current atmosphere of federal government is that they want to be in power and they don't want to make solutions, because the minute you make solutions, you don't have power anymore. You're not needed. So
right.
just calling something the Solutions Party is scary to them. And so I would happily support anything that gets the current crop of politicians out of Washington, D.C., and even extend that down to the state levels.
Of course. Yeah. Yes, exactly. This is exactly the state level, the local level, one chance, one opportunity to make your difference, then move on.
I like it. All right, Mr. Jaqua, you have the final word. Take us out. What do you got to say?
I just want to say I really have enjoyed this. I hope we can do it again. I really enjoy the pushback. I mean, this is what it's all about. If I were afraid of pushback, I wouldn't be doing this. I enjoy being challenged. I enjoy hearing the different points of view. It's very important that we keep things civil and we inspire each other. And that we always remember that your fellow American is never the enemy. Your fellow American is not the enemy. And we have to come back to we have to be a country that talks about these things in a civil way, a civil exchange of ideas. And let's convince each other of the best ideas, and let's move forward. It's as simple as that.
I got you. Where can they find you at? Where can they find more information about Solutions Party?
Just solutionsparty.org. You can also find me on X with Twitter at _Solutions Party. I post there daily. I'm going to start posting more. I'm starting to post videos on TikTok. And right now in Oregon, we're registered as a nonprofit. I'm trying to raise some funds to make it an official political party. But as I said earlier, it really doesn't even have to be a political party if you just vote for candidates who promise to serve one term and not seek another office while they're serving and then moving on. So that's the fundamental idea. It doesn't even have to be an official political party to make that happen.
I love it. That's all we got. All right. We are up on our hour. We will see you guys next time. Next week, Chappie, we on next week?
As far as I know.
You got it. Hey,
Hey, thank you so much. I
wanna
really
thank Mr.
appreciate it.
Jaqua for coming through.
It's
Indeed,
been a
man.
total
Thank you guys
pleasure.
so much. All right, POG Universe. We'll see you guys next week. We out.
Gee, mate, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
All right, yo, let's get into it.
Try to take over the world.
Reaching freedom
Try
of
to
conscience.
take over the world.
And greatest chaplain in the world, Mr.
Try
Lance
to
O'Neill.
take over the world.